Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. It's Friday night, I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as we ask, is it time to worry as more INEOS big changes are revealed? Beware the head coach scenario, we'll be talking about that. Beware Gareth Southgate's latest comments, we'll be talking about that. And beware the removal of Casemiro and Varane simply to raise money. Is it time to worry? Also, Sir Jim potentially getting involved in transfers. Do we want that to be happening? We'll talk about that as well. Lots to get into on the show tonight. And of course, it's Friday night, so get interactive, get your questions in. Just very quickly, this is just sort of broken, so I'm going to bring this in. I don't want to talk about Southgate. No one wants to talk about Southgate. I want to talk about this obsession that INEOS seem to have with having a head coach that has no say in recruitment, and yet no other club in England has done this successfully in the history of the Premier League. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's start off. Gareth Southgate is obviously England manager at the moment. There's been a press conference. He's been asked about Manchester United. This is what he's got to say. And before I say it, let me just say thank you to all the journalists out there that have made this guy relevant, that he actually gets to talk about my club, that he actually gets linked to the Manchester United job. He won't be able to get out the door, his head will be so big. Why is Gareth Southgate being asked about the Manchester United job? Does people go on the set of EastEnders and say, do you fancy working on the latest Scorsese film? Bloody idiots. Anyway, this is what he had to say. There are two things from my point of view. One, I'm totally shit and I don't deserve the job. No, he didn't really say that. There are two things from my point of view. One is I'm the England manager. I've got one job to try and deliver the Euros. And the second thing is Manchester United have a manager. And I think it's always completely disrespectful when there is a manager in place. I mean, the fact that the smug gets to say that about our club riles me up. You know, if I was Ten Hag, I'd be punching the wall. The fact that he can sit there and say, it's disrespectful to talk about a job at another club when that current club has still got a manager. Arsehole. Arsehole, you shouldn't have the bloody right to do it. Absolute joker. You know what? It's an absolute joke. An absolute joke. It's like Brad Pitt being married to a supermodel and someone knocking on the door who's a right ugly twat and saying, you know what? You might be married to her and out of respect, I won't ask her on a date. But just know, I'm thinking about it. Boom, shakalak, get out, knobhead. What are you talking about? Absolute joke. Don't get it, but that's Southgate. That's it. That's the end of it. Jude said, look, if he's been tapped up, INEOS are tapped. That's the end of the day. Look, I think accountability is absolutely essential in this game. It has to be, because if it isn't, there's too many United fans, in my opinion, that are living up the arse of anything INEOS are going to do. And, you know, you've got to have an opinion on it. You've got to have an opinion on it, because if you don't, I think we could be in massive, massive trouble. But what I will say is, on a positive, I've always said I think it's bullshit about Southgate. I told you last night what I know from the club. I told you this morning what I know from the players, and I stand by that. So I think that the whole Southgate thing is somewhat overhyped, but I still would be embarrassed if I was INEOS being linked to Southgate, and the fact that they've allowed that to happen for weeks is incredible. I mean, you know what? If Man United allowing themselves for the Southgate name to be attached to them, I mean, what's that like you being attached? It's like someone saying that you're like, I don't know, I'm not going to go down that road, but you know what I mean? It's like a bad rumour being attached to you. You imagine, I'd be like, I'm going to the police. I'm not being accused of that. Stop it. But no, I'm not talking about anything sinister. I'm just sort of like, you know, you let your dog shit on your neighbour's garden or something like that. You don't want those sort of rumours. You don't want to be the guy who lets the dog shit on someone else's neighbour's garden. You know, it's not good enough. Anyway, this is a bit of exclusive. Fair play to Sam, one of our employees. The United Stand understands that Gareth Southgate stands as a strong possibility for the position, alongside contenders such as Nagelsmann, Flick and De Zerbi. However, Erik ten Hag enjoys significant backing from the majority of the dressing room, which is what I told you this morning, which could prove it, and this is not my information, by the way. This is not mine. It's on the United Stand, but it's not from me. So it's interesting how it, you know, backs up what I've said to you this morning. However, Erik ten Hag enjoys significant backing from the majority of the dressing room, which could prove instrumental, particularly if the team achieves a top 5 finish or secures victory in the FA Cup, potentially solidifying his position as manager. And it's thought that Erik ten Hag is actually in a stronger position now than he was when INEOS first came on board, which I think is quite interesting in the sense that, you know, when INEOS first came in, there was maybe a bit of uncertainty, and having worked with him a little bit, they actually do like him. So it's quite interesting. Also, in the Daily Mail tonight, they were talking about the desire of INEOS to turn the manager role at Manchester United into a head coach role. And I do want to talk about that. We are going to be talking about Casemiro and Varane as well. There are rumours out there that United are going to cash in and remove both of them, which I think is, if I'm being honest, I think it's idiotic, but we'll talk about that as well. I also read in the Manchester Evening News today that it was only an opinion piece, but I couldn't believe what I was reading. Basically, they said... They said sell Varane and Lindelof, buy Branthwaite and keep Maguire as third choice. And you know what? I sat there and thought, this is a journalist writing this, by the way. I sat there and thought, respect, this is football. Everybody is allowed an opinion. But oh my God, this is why mistakes are made at Manchester United, because some people have wild ideas about how to make Manchester United successful. And it just shows you, like, a journalist who supports Man United and writes about Man United actually thinks it would be a good idea to sell Lindelof and Varane, buy Branthwaite and have Maguire third choice. And it makes me question, do these people watch Manchester United or understand anything about the modern tactical game? If Harry Maguire's our third choice centre-back next season, as soon as one of our centre-backs gets injured, we're playing a deep line again. Do people not watch and understand why there's a big chasm of space in our midfield because we have to play deep with certain defenders? It amazes me that somebody would put pen to paper on that and not get it checked by somebody with, you know, tactical acumen. But look, what I wanted to talk about is this head coach situation with Manchester United. We can come back to that in a minute because a few people are stunned in the chat. But, you know, I have been to the pub, yes. I'm in trouble with Angry Ginge, actually. But I forgot I went to the pub. Hi, Dad, says Swiss Cheese. I'm not your dad. Gifted the membership, Krista. Thank you very much. I'm not happy with INEOS so far, says Dylan. Allowing this Southgate talk is terrifying. All talk, no walk so far. Love Friday shows, mate. You're a legend. Thank you, Dylan. Get your questions in. Ray says, I watched the morning show. If the budget is 100 million, I still think if we're savvy with sales and we buy well, we can do everything we need to. 8 out, 6 in, says Ray. Manchild says that the head coach thing is what every club in the world has. We're just finally implementing a football structure. Eric is used to this system. Well, it's not. You're wrong, Manchild. You're wrong, and I'll tell you why you're wrong in a minute. Nick says, I honestly don't think Southgate will be our manager. There's no club football and journalists need to somehow ensure we are in the news, says Nick. Hi, Mark. From me, I'm Nelson. INEOS wants a left-back because they're planning on playing Luke Shaw at centre-back because he's so injury-prone, says Nelson. There you go. And hi, Mark. I agree Ten Hag is better than Southgate, but in your assessment, you failed to discuss his in-game management in the Champions League, which cost United thought, says Ryle. I think that Onana cost us in the Champions League from what I remember, Ryle. We scored enough goals in the Champions League. I think, you know, the Rashford sending off in Copenhagen probably shouldn't have been a sending off. That was absolutely huge. And the mistakes by Onana, you just can't make at that level. So, you know, I think if Rashford doesn't get sent off and Onana plays at the start of the season like he is now, we're still in the Champions League. I don't think it's anything to do with in-game management, to be fair. Stian's gifted a membership. Always nice to see people in the community gifting to others. Lovely stuff. I want to talk about this head coach thing, though, because, you know what? I don't get this. And we have... It's not anti-INEOS, it's not pro-Qatar, it's not anti-Qatar, it's not pro-INEOS, it's not pro-Glazer, it's not Glazers out. This is a purely footballing conversation I want to have here. So again tonight, I see that in another news outlet, we're getting this story that whether Ten Hag stays or not, INEOS want to reduce his role because they want a coach and they want a recruitment team that is involved and runs the recruitment and the structure of the football club, and the coach is just the coach. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And I don't know why they think it's the way to go with their lack of football expertise. I mean, at the end of the day, Barada's coming in from Manchester City. They don't run that system. Liverpool don't run that system. Arsenal don't run that system. No club that's won the Premier League since 1992 has run this system. And yet we're hearing these constant rumours that INEOS want to put a coach in place who coaches the team and nothing else, and recruitment is dealt by by the director of football and the CEO, and the structure of the football club and how we play will be dealt with those people as well. Look, that's the way, says Thuto. It's not the way in England. It's not the way. And you can throw your opinion in and you can throw your toys out the pram at the same time, but it's not how it's done in England. It certainly didn't happen under Sir Alex Ferguson. It doesn't happen under Pep Guardiola, and it didn't happen under Jurgen Klopp. There is this myth that Michael Edwards had total control of transfers under Jurgen Klopp, and yet there are countless interviews with Jurgen Klopp talking about having control of transfers. In fact, last summer, he was asked about, has he lost control of transfers with people like Jordan Henderson and Fabinho leaving, which seemed odd? And he said, no, I still influence transfers. Nobody was going to stop those players going. Pep Guardiola actually was given more control of transfers than any other previous Man City manager because they weren't happy with the transfers that they were making. Pep Guardiola has a massive part to play in the transfers at Manchester City, as does Arteta at Arsenal. So Manchester United implementing a structure that is completely different to every other club. And I would admit that there will be people at Man City, people at Liverpool, and people at Arsenal who are in discussion with those managers, working with them. None of those managers, I think, have exclusive, let's go and do this. But what INEOS are talking about doing, or what they're rumoured to be doing, is actually taking control completely, so that the manager is just given, not spoken to. That concerns me. I would like clarity on what it is we're doing, because we cannot be Manchester United and have a manager that has no say in signings at all. I think that's abhorrent. I think that's ridiculous. And people will shout about Real Madrid. Last time I checked, Madrid wasn't anywhere near England, and they have never won a Premier League trophy. And Madrid winning Champions Leagues, well, what's that got to do with the price of bread? They operate in La Liga in a two-horse race. We're talking about the Premier League. Tell me a club in the Premier League that's put a manager in place and said, you've got no say in the structure or transfers at all. We will tell you who's going to sign for this club, and we will tell you how to coach the team, and we will set the structure up. It just seems weird, especially when Erik ten Hag has had such a massive part to play in youth development at Manchester United. Are they going to remove that and say, you don't do that anymore, you just coach the players? It would be weird. There is also this myth that Erik ten Hag has made bad signings, mainly from the Ten Hag outers. Last time I checked, Rasmus Højlund was a really good signing. Last time I checked, Casemiro was a good signing. Last time I checked, Eriksen was a good signing until he got fucking injured by Andy Carroll. Martinez has been a good signing as well. Onana's becoming a good signing. So he's made 5 good signings out of, well, who's a failure? Anthony? Mason Mount, the jury's out, so I'm not including him in. Malacia, well, he looked okay until the injury, but okay, let's throw him in. So he's made 5 good signings and maybe 2/3 not good signings. Oh, so he's operating at around 60 to 70% success rate. Oh, just like every other manager in history, like Sir Alex Ferguson. People are, you need to be realistic in relation to the history of football in the Premier League. No manager gets over 70% with their transfers. Not even Pep Guardiola, not Sir Alex Ferguson. Around 60 to 70% hit rate with transfers is pretty much the average, which is what Ten Hag is actually hitting. So people need to remove this myth that Erik ten Hag has made bad transfers. He hasn't. There's been 1 or 2, but there's always 1 or 2 with every coach as well. It just concerns me when I hear about INEOS want a coach who's going to coach, and they won't have any say in how we're going to play or how we're going to sign players, because it becomes a dictatorship. And we're Manchester United. I want a manager with personality. I want a Sir Alex Ferguson. I want a Jose Mourinho. I want a Jurgen Klopp. I don't want a Graham Potter. I don't want a I'm so grateful to be here. What are you going to give me next? Oh, you're selling them? Don't worry. I'll never complain. I'm happy just to be here. Oh, you've sold my best striker. Don't worry. I'm happy to be here. I don't really like this, but I do really. I do. I love it. I love it. It's the best. It's like opening your presents in front of your bloody auntie on Christmas Day and it's Lynx Africa again. Oh, lovely. I've not worn it since I was about 8. I'm now in my late 30s, but I love it. It's great. It's great. I'm going to go and play with it now all morning, spraying it around the room and my arse and having about 10 showers with the shower gel. It's amazing. I don't want that. If you want it, fine. I'm not going to fall out with anybody over it, but I don't want it, and it concerns me because, look, I'm never going to be somebody that shouts Simon Jordan out, but he did make a very good point a few months ago when everybody was, you know, praising INEOS, and he said, look, when you look at INEOS and what they've done in football, next to nothing. When you look at what they did in cycling, when you look at what they've done in the F1, it's not a rich tapestry of everything they touch turns to gold. That's not the case. So there has to be accountability. I think too many United fans are just wrapped up in this takeover that they think that INEOS are going to shit gold. And I hope they do. I really do hope they do. But I am not, and a lot of United fans are saying this, I am not just going to sit back and go, I trust you. Oh, I trust you. Because this is what we did in 2005 with the Glazers. And it was too bloody late when we realised it was wrong. And fair play to those select fans who realised from the start what the problem was. Now, I'm not saying INEOS are the Glazers. Their intentions are completely different. But Todd Bowley's intentions at Chelsea are noble. You know, his heart's in the right place. He wants to make Chelsea successful. He's completely fucked it up. He spent £1 billion in 18 months and he's fucked it up. So even the people, in life, just because somebody's trying to do the right thing doesn't mean you should trust them. You know, people who do the right thing can make a bloody mess of it. So all I'm saying is, I'm not, and many other fans are not just going to sit there and go, oh, let's give them a chance. I'm not giving them a chance on Gareth Southgate. I don't think it'll happen anyway, but I'm not giving that a chance, and I don't think anybody will. But I also don't like that. I don't like the head coach idea. I don't like it. I'm sorry. I just don't. And if you do, that's fine. You say Onana costed us the Champions League, but never De Gea. Eduardo, Eduardo, it's Friday night. It's the end of the week. We're trying to have a grown-up conversation. Why are you bringing David De Gea into a conversation about the Champions League this year? Go forth and prosper. David says there's an interview with Ashworth at Brighton saying there's no point signing players the manager doesn't want, and he will not do that. Manager gets a veto, says David. And that's what I'm saying. There is a lot of talk about this, and it's a little bit like the stadium. Are we rebuilding Old Trafford, or are we knocking it down and moving somewhere else? If we're knocking it down and moving somewhere else, I'm dead against it. If we're rebuilding Old Trafford, I'm with it. If we're going to take some of the responsibility off the manager and have a select committee, I'm all for it. If we're going to totally take control from the manager and say, we'll give you the players, I'm dead against it. And I said this in the summer as well. I think that in the summer, we needed a director of football to say, you're not letting De Gea walk out the door for nothing and paying £50 million for a replacement. So for me, the dream is what Liverpool have, what Arsenal have, what Man City have. They have a manager who has a big say in the transfers, but they also have a director of football or a sporting director that has a big say as well. And they don't do anything without agreement. And that is what I want. What I don't want is one extreme or the other. I don't want a manager who has total control, because that's dangerous. And I don't want a director of football recruitment structure that has total control and a manager has none. That would be weird to me. And can you imagine how weird that would be as well? Because a Man United manager does a press conference once or twice a week. And we're used to that. And we've had some fantastic ones with Sir Alex. Even Raniks were good. I enjoyed Ten Hag's. But can you imagine next season with whatever manager we've got and they've got no control on transfers? And they're just sat there doing an interview like some of these European coaches. A lot of European clubs like Bayern Munich and Dortmund, their CEO and their director of football, or sporting director as they call them there, they do interviews. Because there's no point talking to the manager about transfers. The manager doesn't... The press conferences for the Bundesliga are boring as shit. because the manager can't really talk about transfers and stuff because they don't have control of it. INEOS doing what that will only attract crap managers, says Terence. They'll attract puppets. They want to reduce his larger role, same as Pep, Klopp, Arteta. The article says they want people in their roles, not a manager across 5 roles, which is absolutely fine, man-child. Isn't Maguire one of the top 5 highest earners? Why isn't anyone calling for him to be sold? Says Zero Connection. British bias. I don't know. Boz says, top decision that from INEOS. Coaches should be coaches. Ancelotti has no say on recruitment. Look at Liverpool until Edwards was there. Their recruitment was top. Ten Hag signings have been utter shit. You know, if you're going to talk stuff, don't talk shit. It's a myth that Jurgen Klopp didn't have any control on transfers under Edwards. A myth. An absolute myth. Go and do your homework. It's a myth that Pep Guardiola doesn't have any control on transfers. An absolute myth. Like, I'll call it out for what it is, because it's bullshit. And it's not a top decision to have a coach who just coaches and has no say in transfers. It's a European decision. And the last time I checked, Brexit means Brexit. No, the last time I checked, the Premier League wasn't in La Liga. It wasn't in Italy, and it wasn't in Spain. There's a lot of things that happen in Europe that don't happen here. A lot of players in Europe have release clauses. We don't have those. A lot of clubs in Europe have sporting directors who run transfers, and the coaches. We don't do that here. I don't want it. I don't want a coach who is a puppet. I want a manager who works with recruitment on signings, and hopefully that's what we'll get. Stian's gifted a membership. Thank you very much. Ray says, I think a lot of this is nonsense. No CEO or director of football yet, so who is next? I feel they are being targeted because we don't have the structure yet, says Ray. Well, look, it's a great point. It's a great point because where is the director of football? You know, we're a week into the international break. Where is the director of football? I can't give you an update on this. You know, it's not that we're not trying to. It's not that Fabrizio's not trying to, or any other journalist is not trying to. There is no update on Dan Ashworth. When was it that Dan Ashworth? Here we go. Here we go. Fabrizio. Dan Ashworth. Let me tell you this. I mean, we're talking here. I'm trying to figure out when it was that Dan Ashworth was, you know, first announced as the guy that United wanted, and we're well over 5-6 weeks. We're well over 5 or 6 weeks, and he's been on gardening leave. He's bored. He's cut his garden. Like, you know, there's nothing else for him to do. But I think that with the Dan Ashworth thing, it will happen, but it's such a big summer for Manchester United. And my fear is it time to worry? My fear is, are we getting to a point at some point where we write next season off? We're not there yet. It's not, by the way, it's not time to worry. You know, I know it says it on the thumbnail, but it's not time to worry yet. Some of these stories do worry me. Of course, it's been quite a worrying week when you think about some of the stories. And it does worry me that we might follow this. I mean, Chelsea follow the model under Todd Bowley of no manager involvement. Potter had no involvement in those signings. Pochettino, I don't think, has any involvement in those signings. And look at how shit Chelsea are. It's a terrible idea. It's a European model, and it doesn't work in the Premier League. It's yet to work in the Premier League. And I don't want us to be the guinea pig for it, so to speak. But I don't think it's time to worry yet. But it does worry me a little bit that the March international break is notorious for transfer conversation between agents and players and clubs. And it's such an important time. And we are having those conversations, but it's the Akanji project, which I've mentioned before. Under Ranić in February, Akanji agreed to come to Man United. Fabrizio was on this show and spoke about it. We didn't buy him because Ten Hag came in and said he didn't want Akanji. So we are talking to players, but how many of those players will actually be players we want to follow through on? And obviously, if you had your CEO and your director of football in place, you could be, you know, more concrete on that. I mean, it's not time to worry yet, but there is a lot of decisions that need to be made. And especially around exits. Yeah. Don't you think what INEOS mean is that signings to be dictated by director of football so we don't end up with players from multiple managers like we have now, says Sid T. I'm trying to understand what you mean there. No. I think what you're trying to say there is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the director of football chooses who we sign, because if we sack a manager, it's always on the director of football. But I don't want that, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. If the director of football signs the players and the coach is just a coach, I feel we lose what we are then. I think we become, something that we shouldn't be. I don't think the director of football should be signing players. I think the manager has to have a say in it. I think the director of football, at the very least, should be saying to the manager, where are the holes in this team? And the manager says, well, look, we need centre-backs. And the director of football says, oh, what about Bremer and De Ligt? And then Ten Hag says, I'd rather have Branthwaite and Todibo. And they talk it out amongst themselves as to what that's all about. I'd hate the scenario where the director of football looks at the team and goes, we need 2 centre-backs, there's Bremer and De Ligt. I'd hate that, for the manager to have no say in it. That doesn't work. And that's not what's happening with Pep and Klopp and Arteta. And these people who pretend that it is are foolish. You're telling me that Jurgen Klopp's been at Liverpool with somebody saying, yeah, I think you need to sell Mane, and I think you need to buy Diaz, and I think we're going to buy McAllister, and you've got no say in it at all. Absolute bollocks. Hi, Mark. I could be wrong, but surely if Newcastle agree the fee with United for Ashworth, he won't be allowed to join United until Newcastle replace him, says Nigel. He might not be able to join us until next bloody Christmas, mate. I don't know. Who would you sell and keep if the season ended now, says Chikorito. Oh, mate, you've just asked me the biggest answered question. Okay. Right here, right now, Wan-Bissaka's got to go to raise money, and I'd like to bring Frimpong in, which is actually very interesting about Frimpong. Remember I spoke about it on the Hotometer, and I put him on the Hotometer, and I told you about him. Lots of people talking about him now. Lots of people talking about Frimpong now. So I would sell Wan-Bissaka. I would sell Maguire. I would sell Lindelof. I would buy 2 centre-backs, obviously. I would let Ericsson go. I would let McTominay go. Obviously, Van der Beek's going to go. Martial's going to go. Sancho would go. Greenwood would go. Obviously, Brandon Williams would go as well. So, about those players, just to raise money. We've got to raise money. Incomings, Frimpong, 2 centre-backs, another midfielder. I don't mind if it's that Gomez from Wolves, to be honest with you. A striker. They'd be the 5 priorities. If there's any, so right back, 2 centre-backs, midfielder and striker. If there's anything left, I don't mind going for Elise. I don't mind going for a left back, but those would be my 5 priorities. I thought INEOS were going to listen to the fans, says Terence. Well, they might be listening to the fans. They might be listening to the fans. I mean, look, they are only just getting their feet under the table. The Glazers never did nothing. You know what? Let's not pretend that this Southgate rumour, the Glazers would have come out and stamped it out. They never did anything. So INEOS not stamping it out doesn't mean that they're useless. Maybe they're just getting used to what it's like. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they're sort of like, we don't give a shit. It's not true. Don't care. The fans can argue amongst themselves. We've not said anything. We're not going to do that. The proof will be in the pudding. Maybe that's their approach. Maybe they're just getting their feet under the table. I did want to talk to you, though, about Varane and Lindelof. Was there something else I wanted to talk about? Oh, yeah. Just going back on that story this morning. The Dewsbury Hall show this morning. We were talking about Ben Jacobs mentioned it. I brought it into the show on the morning show, but there was an extra bit to that I missed. That Ben Jacobs said that Sir Jim Radcliffe has recommended to the recruitment team that Dewsbury Hall is the sort of player that United should be looking to get, or words to those effect. I'd have mentioned it on the morning show. I didn't. I hadn't read that bit. I just want to add it in here. So Jim Radcliffe should not be recommending any footballer to Manchester United. He's bought the club. Back off. Lifelong Man United fan. You put your money in. Let the experts do the job. I don't want an owner playing football manager with Manchester United. Absolutely not. Yeah, No, there's no point in having Barada, Dan Ashworth, Ten Hag. You know, absolutely not. I don't want an owner. And that's the sort of thing I would be worried about if I was INEOS on a PR point. You don't want to be putting people putting stories out that you as an owner are recommending players. That I do not want. I don't know enough about Sir Jim Radcliffe, but from the interview he did the other day, I don't necessarily, you know, agree with some of the things he said about football. And I certainly don't want him having an opinion on transfers, because he's a businessman. He, as a Man United fan, will benefit like all of us, but he's the owner of the club, and as the owner of the club, don't mix business with pleasure. I.e., don't try and run everything. If I bought Man United, I wouldn't be getting involved in transfers. As much as I might want to, I wouldn't, because I'm the owner. You know, I'm going to recruit best in class and I'm going to get them to do the job. And if they fuck up, I'll sack them and I'll get somebody else. But I don't want to be getting my hands dirty, because it's just not, it's not right. And I don't think he has done that, but it just surprised me that it was in the article. Don't we need a left back more than a right back, says John? Maybe. I want to talk to you about Casemiro and Varane. There are still circulating rumours that both those players will be removed in the summer. And it's a tough one to talk about, really, because first of all, I'm just going to run the polls as each player. Would you let Casemiro go? Yes or no? One major concern I have, however, is Sir Jim Radcliffe's sporting control, yes, but who holds the purse strings overall in this situation, says Ray. Ray, I think this is a great point. You know, I think it's a great point from Ray. I find myself forgetting that the Glazers are still here. I can't remember who it was. Was it Man United Supporters Trust? Or was it 58? I don't know, because I didn't see it myself, but somebody sent me a screenshot of something yesterday that one of the fan groups had said they're convinced the Glazers will be gone in 18 months. And somebody asked me about it. And I said, well, I hope that guess is right, but absolutely no. I've heard absolutely nothing about that. And also, logically, it makes no sense. Why would the Glazers go in 18 months? Like, 18 months is no time, by the way. 18 months is Christmas next year. Like, why would they go halfway through the season after next? Is that just because somebody said, what year is it now? 2024. Oh, I figured it out. It's because there was that rumour going round that INEOS were going to get rid of the Glazers by 2026. There was going to be that, what was it called? There was a rumour going round that when INEOS bought Man United, they were buying 25% now with an option to buy all of it in 2026. But we know that's not there. That's a myth. It's not there. When the official documents went out, there is nothing there that they can buy the whole club. So no, I don't. I mean, look, I hope so, but there's absolutely nothing legally out there, or rumored out there that INEOS and the Glazers are going to part ways in 18 months. In fact, the only thing legally there is that the Glazers can get rid of INEOS in 18 months, I think, or something like that. Not that I think that'll happen either. I think the Glazers. I forget the Glazers are still here, because it's INEOS. But the Glazers still own half the football club, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I mean, at the end of the day, they're in a great position. If it all goes wrong, they can say it's on INEOS. If it all goes right, INEOS will take the credit, and their value in the club will go up. So I don't think we'll hear much about the Glazers. We don't talk about the Glazers because we forget about the Glazers, and that they're happy with that. They're in the background with 50%. Like a silent majority owner making their money. If it's on the director of football where the players work out, doesn't that risk more player power with signings going over the manager's head to the director of football if they're unhappy, says Glennie. Speak about LaCroix. We need to scout him, says Marcus Brown. Well, I've had him on my FIFA career mode, but I've never heard that United are scouting him, so there's not really much more I can say about that. But bringing it back to Casemiro and Varane, well, 61% of you wouldn't let Casemiro go in the summer. So let's just do a quick Varane one as well, because that sort of feeds into what I want to talk about. So would you let Varane go? There we go. My point on this really is that the rumour is, and has been for quite a while, that because they're on big wages, United want to move them out. And that's it. I don't have anything to add to that. It's literally because they're on big wages, United want to move them out. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because there are so many things. And I remember saying this. Remember on Christmas Eve when it broke that INEOS deal had been done? I mean, we move on. But in a way, it was memorable. But what football club announces at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve, stuff like that? There's just no care for the fans at all. Anyway, I remember saying it on that Christmas Eve stream. I said, excitement, positivity, hope, all those things are correct. But as time moves on, there are so many hurdles to jump that they might fall at that we will get frustrated with. I think a lot of what's been done so far is encouraging. Berardi specifically, Dan Ashworth as well. But there are decisions that it's almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, isn't it? Like I don't know how it's going to go. I hope we keep moving forward, but we just don't know if they're going to make a bad move. From our point of view, and what I mean by that is if you remove Casemiro and Varane to save £500,000 a week, but you keep Maguire and McTominay, who are worth £60 million in transfer fees, make that make sense. So you remove a better midfielder and a better centre-back to save £500,000 a week, but you keep Maguire and McTominay, who are worse, when you could cash in for 60 million. And that, to me, I don't understand. I understand looking at their wage and going, they're expensive, we're broke. But I don't understand. Basically, it becomes a cost-saving exercise, but a reduction in talent in the squad. We become weaker to save money. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it does concern me a little bit. But I think both players would like to stay. But I think there will be shocks in the summer. I mean, De Gea, we can't act like we've not had big shocks at Man United. Like, I think sometimes we do wander into a sense of vulnerability. A false sense of security. That's what I meant. Where we think, I can't imagine United just selling Casemiro to Saudi Arabia for 40 million. I just can't imagine it happening. I can't imagine that. Well, you should. The De Gea thing was unbelievable last summer, but it happened. The Ronaldo thing the year before that was unbelievable, but it happened. Sancho not playing football for 3 months because of a tweet was unbelievable, but it happened. The Greenwood situation was unbelievable, but it happened. There's been a lot of things at United that have happened over the last 2 years that you would have thought, oh my God, that won't happen. So I definitely think there's going to be 2 or 3 shocking things in the summer. I hope we don't I hope Casemiro and Varane don't go. I think they're massive influences in the dressing room. Every player you speak to or listen to in an interview, it's always Casemiro and Varane being mentioned. I think it'd be a big mistake to let them go, but I think it's definitely on the cards. And as I said, look, really important. I know we've spoken about it a lot, but the centre-back situation is the keys to the kingdom for Manchester United tactically. I saw somebody today talking about it. Again, I forget. It was quoted by a fan on social media saying, "Oh, watch this. It's so right about the issues with Man United." And I watched it, and I was like, I felt like crying, really, because I was like, this journalist had put this article out about what Ten Hag's trying to do with the centre-backs, but he can't do it because he hasn't got the players. And it was a Today article, and people were like sucking it off, basically. And I was like, oh, and I'm not just saying me, we have been talking about this all season. Pretty much since the first game pretty much all season, because Martinez has been out all season. And I was like, this is what happens sometimes. It's like when Carragher was jumping around on Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago about the space in Man United's midfield, like he'd found it out himself. You know, it's like discovering bloody Disneyland in 2024, and then everyone's like, yeah, I've been loads of times. It's like we know this. So I was really surprised when I read that article today about this is a separate article now, about, you know, players that this particular journalist would sell. And they said, I'd sell Varane and Lindelof, buy Branthwaite and keep Maguire as third choice. And I was like, what games are you watching? Like, what games are you watching? How can you think that keeping Johnny Evans or Harry Maguire or Victor Lindelof as our third choice centre-back is going to make any difference? Next season will be like this year, basically. We have to have what Liverpool have got. Van Dijk and Matip's been injured most of the season, but then they can bring in Konate or Joe Gomez or Kwanzaa. Liverpool have got 5 centre-backs who can all play the same way as Van Dijk. They're not as good as Van Dijk, but they can all play high line and recover with pace. They've got 5. 5. Van Dijk, Konate, Matip, Gomez and Kwanzaa. They've got 5 centre-backs. And look, Jurgen Klopp probably wants to pick Konate and Van Dijk every game he can. But he knows if one of them get injured, he doesn't have to drop his defence. And it's incredible, absolutely incredible, that Manchester United and Erik ten Hag, for most of this season, have had to play the way they don't want to play to accommodate players he doesn't really want. Last summer, he didn't want Johnny Evans, he wanted Kim Min-jae, and United fucked it up. And if we'd bought Kim Min-jae, most of this season, we would have been able to play Varane and Kim Min-jae, and we would have been playing on the halfway line. So he tried to sell Harry Maguire last summer as well, and United didn't let it happen. So when you look at United this season, so much of it is about the centre-back situation, and so much of our problem in the midfield is because we play a deep line that we have to do. It's not what we want to do, we have to do it. So yeah, I think that, you know, people who think let's keep Maguire or Lindelof or Evans as third choice haven't got a bloody clue about the football that they're watching. And some people just watch football and don't watch it tactically. That's fine. But a lot of us watch it tactically, and we absolutely 100% next season need at least 3 centre-backs that can play the way we want to play. Ideally, we need 4. Perfect scenario, 5. Liverpool have got 5. Man City have got 5. You know, you need... What you basically need is, in every position, we don't have it up front. Look, let's move away from centre-back. We don't have it up front. If Rasmus gets injured, we don't even have another striker, let alone somebody that's half as good as him. Look, you're never going to have a Rasmus Højlund on the bench, but what you want on the bench is a wish version, really. You know, you want somebody who can do everything Rasmus can do, but not as good, because they're a bench player. And we don't have it. We don't even have a striker. Look in the Casemiro position. If Casemiro gets injured or he loses form, we don't have a wish version. We've got an 18-year-old who probably is more of a number 8. And that's luck that we've got an 18-year-old having a breakthrough season that can do that. If Kobe Mainoo was injured or wasn't ready, who would have played holding midfield for most of this season? Eriksen, McTominay. So the whole team is in massive need of depth. And depth is not Casemiro for Eriksen. Depth is Casemiro for somebody who can do that role. Like, depth is Rasmus is injured. We've got a striker who can do that role. Depth is Martinez and Varane are injured, but we've got two centre-backs that can do that role. And we are miles away from that. We absolutely are miles away from that. A lot of people saying Johnny Evans is good. Lindelof's been good for us this season. Maguire's been good for us this season. And Johnny Evans has been fantastic this season. You're not listening to what I'm saying. In your idiocy, you are taking a conversation about how we want to play and basically saying that every player that can't do it is shit. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is Johnny Evans, Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof do not suit a high line. Therefore, they can't play for Spurs, Villa, Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool. They can't. None of those clubs would sign Maguire, Lindelof or Evans. So why Man United got them? They're good players and they've been good for us playing a low block. But we don't want to play a low block. We want to play a high block. And the reason we play a low block and the reason they've played well is because they're good in a low block. So we've had to play a low block. So they have been good for us this season. But if we want to solve the gap in the midfield, we need to remove those players and get two in that can play high line. Frimpong is considered English with the homegrown rules, says Mr. Blood. Is he? Hey up. I'll tell you what. If that's true, he's suddenly worth a lot more money to us than he was before. He was at Man City between 2010 and 2019. He was born in 2000. If you have been at a club for 3 years before your 21st birthday, you are classed as homegrown. Is Frimpong classed as homegrown? I mean, I'm not 100%, but yeah, I'm not 100% on that, but he was definitely at Man City between the age of 10 and 19. Yeah, so the homegrown rule is at least 3 years between the age of 15 and 21. I tell you what, that's a scoop. That's a scoop, isn't it? That's a fair play. That's comment of the evening. That is comment of the evening. That is. Well done. Could be comment of the year. So he's got a £34 million release clause. He's a right back, and he's homegrown. For me, that makes him a steal. That makes him an absolute steal because not only is he a very interesting right back in Europe, but if he's classed as homegrown, that's absolutely massive, really. Because we do need to recruit homegrown players. I didn't even know that. And as I said to you on the transfer list on Wednesday, on the Hotometer, Man United are really, really after him. So that makes it very interesting. Well, there you go. A scoop from the live chat. There you go. You've earned your medal there, mates. Well done. Delboy says, I said Frimpong was homegrown weeks ago. I'm not disputing it. I'm sure some of you are going slow sports news, but I generally just haven't ever really thought about it or spoken about it before. Watch Southgate be a smoke screen for Potter, says Munro. Hey, there's a poll for you. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not even entertaining fate. I'm not jinxing it. I think Potter's better than Southgate, but I don't want Potter anywhere near it. They'd rather keep 70 million, 350k a week Rashford because he's young, says Ray. Eduardo says new TV rights deal begins 25-26. Glazers waiting for one last check, says Eduardo. Thank you very much for that. Frimpong's a right winger. He's a right wing back. He's a right wing back for Leverkusen this season. But again, you either understand the tactics or you don't. Watch what Delo does when we play. I mean, he still tries to do it now with a low block, but you watch where Delo goes when we play a high line, and he ain't playing at right back. He's in the midfield. He's overlapping. So I wouldn't have a problem with Frimpong at right back if we had the centre backs to play on the halfway line. In the current system, I'd be concerned about Frimpong because he's basically just going to be a right back. But in the way that we want to play, I think he'd be absolutely fine. Southgate's homegrown, says Gary. Yeah, it doesn't count. It doesn't count, Gary, for managers, and I couldn't give a shit. My postman's homegrown as well. I'd rather have him in charge. At least he delivers. Danny O says he's more offensive but could still do a defensive job, says Danny. Jan's watching him play for Holland right now. There you go. Mahad says Frimpong could not do an inverted role. It's amazing how many of you in the chat are telling us that Frimpong can't play for Manchester United, and yet Erik ten Hag has tried to sign him the last two summer transfer windows and is trying to sign him now. With all due respect, I think I'm going to listen to the manager of Man United who's trying to sign him for the last 2 years over what you think he can and can't do. Because, as I said, we're definitely not playing the way that Ten Hag wants us to play at the moment, because he hasn't been given the players to do it in the key areas to do it. So I think Frimpong at Man United would be very interesting. I take on board what you're saying about the defensive stuff, and he certainly works better when he's wider than being inverted, but Liverpool might go in if Alonso get the job, says Nick. They might do. They might do, especially with Trent being linked to Real Madrid with 1 year left on his contract. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not saying we're signing Frimpong. If he goes to Liverpool, he probably chooses Liverpool over us, doesn't he? But that just shows you the quality of the player he is. United BT says, same guy who signed Mount, Anthony and Malacia. I love this. I love it. Please, please keep wasting your Friday evening being a negative troll in our chat. Because, you know, Mount, you can't make your mind up on yet. Anthony, yeah, been disappointing. And Malacia was brought in as a backup left back and has been injured. So you're stretching, mate. You're stretching more than bloody Stretch Armstrong. Anthony's the only one there that is potentially a flop. And I notice how you've not spoken about Onana, Martinez, Eriksen, Rasmus, Casemiro. You know, you're stretching. You're really stretching. We don't need a first choice right back. I'm happy with Delo, says Dylan. And look, that might be a reason that we don't go for him. I'm just saying, it's interesting. Don't Ipswich have a buy option for 4 million for Brandon Williams, says Mohammed. And I hope they take it. If you had a choice, would you play Erik ten Hag ball or Sir Alex Ferguson, says Ray? Well, I'd take Sir Alex because I've seen it. I don't think we've really seen Ten Hag's football yet. Because I think we need to get certain players back and we need another summer transfer window. The funny thing is, and patience is going to be so important, whether it's INEOS, this manager or the next manager. But you see it day in, day out. There's a real lack of patience in football, and it's not just with our football club. There's a real lack of patience. And I sometimes take notes, but I don't need to. I remember, I've been doing this for nearly 10 years. I remember what we say. There's no point in doing a show and then forgetting what you said 3 years ago or 6 years ago. And I remember 2 years ago when it was Ten Hag or Poch. Every one of you wanted Ten Hag, right? Well, I've got the right to change my mind. You have. You have got the right to change your mind, and nobody should take that away from you. But I also remember 2 years ago, the vast majority were saying it's going to take 2 or 3 summer transfer windows before we can start to compete. And it's going to take between £500 million and £1 billion of transfers before we can compete. And yet, here we are, where, all right, he's had 2 summer transfer windows, but I don't count last summer transfer window. I think it was a bloody mess because of the sale. But this is the 3rd transfer window. And everybody was saying it's going to take 2 or 3. So this is the 3rd one. I think last year was shit because of the takeover. And also, many people agreed we need between £500 million and £1 billion spending on this team. Well, he's spent about 300 really. People say 400, but that's because knobheads who did the negotiation overpaid on every deal. Patience means seeing it through. We need to see this through. We need to see this through, because if we don't see this through, we won't see the next one through, because it's getting less and less every time. If you had a choice, who would... I've done that one from Ray. Look, Friday night show, absolutely love it. I need a stretch. All that talk about stretching has made me need a stretch. Nick, I don't know why you bother being a member, mate. I really don't. I don't know why you say stuff like that, but I don't know. I don't know. Look, I hope you're feeling better, Nick, because saying stuff like that is just really weird for a community like this. You don't have to be here. You don't have to be part of it. It's Friday night. If you're really that angry and upset about what has been a very open and honest conversation, as it always is, please seek help, because there's so many people out there suffering, and there are people you can speak to. So Nick, please do, because I'm worried about people who say things like that. Right, anyway, let's leave it at that. Could we get a top 5 wish list for homegrown players, says Sean? No, because I don't think we need. I don't think we need to be obsessive about homegrown. I mean, Branthwaite would be one. Elise would be another one. Obviously, Frimpong's got to fall in there now. But we only need to buy 1 or 2. We don't need to buy 5. So those 3 would be fine for me. I think if we go for a left back, there's a few that could potentially work as homegrown. I don't see a striker being homegrown. I don't think we need to buy 2 centre backs who are homegrown. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody. Really enjoyed the show tonight. Smash a like on the video. Don't forget tomorrow, 10 o'clock show as per usual, morning show. Tomorrow night, it's England against Brazil on That's Football from 7 o'clock kickoff. So there won't be an 8 o'clock show tomorrow night. So, and I can't even do it at 7 o'clock because they're kicking off. So I think it will just be the 10 o'clock show tomorrow, but we'll see how it goes. But certainly hoping that Manchester United will feature quite heavily tomorrow. Mark, what about the Bruno news? Beth spoke about it at lunchtime. It's great that he's getting a bit of time off. Obviously, he played for Portugal last night. He's now having a few days off. He won't play in the second game, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. Take care, everyone. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Great show, says Lee Berman. Appreciate it, mate.